Thanks for joining us from the Ohio AgNet Voice You Know with the News You Trust studio, sponsored by BASF, where you can count on the trusted performance of Allevo seed treatment to protect your soybean crop. Well, the Ohio Corn and Wheat Growers Association applauds the bipartisan passage of House Bill 170 in the Ohio House of Representatives. The bill establishes a clear regulatory framework for carbon capture and sequestration in Ohio, making a step forward for the state's grain farmers, ethanol producers, and rural communities. Until now, the carbon sequestration process and its projects have been regulated at the federal level. House Bill 170 establishes a framework for Ohio to oversee and regulate these projects within the state, providing clarity for permitting and ensuring landowner protections. Additionally, the legislation strengthens Ohio's ethanol industry, which increases demand for corn and supports farm income. It also promotes investment in rural communities, creates jobs, supports local infrastructure, and keeps value-added processing near Ohio farms. Our farmers want to build a future full of opportunity, one that has a foundation built on value and innovation, said Tad Nicholson, Executive Director of Ohio Corn and Wheat Growers Association. This legislation helps make that future possible, strengthening ethanol markets, protecting landowners, and keeping Ohio agriculture strong, principles that Ohio Corn and Wheat fights for every day. House Bill 170 now moves to the Ohio Senate, where Ohio Corn and Wheat Growers Association urges swift approval to ensure continued progress for Ohio's farmers and ethanol industry. Today's weather brought to you by Seed Consultants. Simply better performance online at seedconsultants.com. Here's the forecast.
Sunny, warm, and dry for your Thursday. I'm Chief Meteorologist Ryan Martin. Let's take a look at your forecast update. Trouble-free weather today. Temperatures well above normal. It's breezy out there in spots, and we're looking at a great harvest day overall. Watching a weather system try and move through Michigan tomorrow. A lot of clouds up there. I mentioned that because I think a few of those clouds may try and work down into northern tier counties of Ohio. At this point, I am not concerned about precipitation, at least through the daytime hours for Friday. I think where we have to watch for a little bit of pop-up action is going to be overnight Friday night into Saturday north of US 30. The rest of the state sees nothing, and then our next frontal boundary shows up as we move through the overnight Saturday night through Sunday morning and afternoon. I think we can pencil in anywhere from 1/4 to 1.5 inches of rain with coverage at 100% of the Buckeye State there. We take a dry day for Monday the 20th. Warm still with southwest flow, but then we see a trough boundary moving through the Great Lakes region for Tuesday. I think it throws clouds down into Ohio, maybe a few spits and sprinkles north of US 20, but the rest of the state just sees the clouds and a wind shift. Strong northwest flow will be in here then to finish out Tuesday, staying through Wednesday, Thursday, and getting a reinforcing shot next Friday the 24th. That means temperatures will be a bit on the chilly side. Not brutally cold, but chilly before a major warm-up then the later part of that next weekend, the 25th, 26th, right on through the week of the 27th. I'm meteorologist Ryan Martin.
And thanks, Ryan. Let's check in with our weekly update from the Ohio Soybean Council and your checkoff dollars at work. Here's Dusty Sonnenberg.
Joining me is Steve Reinhardt. Steve, past chair of the United Soybean Board. Steve, a lot of work being done by USB with farmers' checkoff dollars to try and drive domestic demand for soybeans. A lot of times we think about livestock, number one consumer of soy and soy products, but there's a lot of non-feed type uses also that soy has been found to be very useful in new development. Let's talk a little bit about some of those.
Sure. So our goal at the United Soybean Board is to return that value back to the farmer for their investment in the checkoff. And for every dollar that we invest in some of this research, we're able to gain back $12.30. And that comes back then to help increase the labor force throughout the country, as well as the GDP through a lot of those different products and stuff that we can work on and then become part of our everyday life. And one of the biggest wins we've had here lately as we talk about additional soybean crush for the biofuel industry is what do we do with the meal? And one of the things that we've discovered through our research working with Green Plains Solutions is we can take soybean meal and create a firefighting foam. And this firefighting foam is 100% biodegradable. So it has none of the PFAS or the forever chemicals in traditional firefighting foam, which has been so detrimental to firemen's health and then environmental cleanup. And so I call it a win-win. We get to help our first responders. It's better for the environment, and then we get to sell soybeans in the process. So that's one example.
My guest again today, Steve Reinhart, past chair of the United Soybean Board. Today's update brought to you by the Ohio Soybean Council and your soybean checkoff.
And thanks, Dusty. Well, Archer Daniels Midland asked a federal court to dismiss one of a handful of lawsuits claiming the company profited by manipulating the price of ethanol at the Agro terminal in Illinois, arguing that the Midwest Renewable Energy's claims in an ongoing legal action don't match up with what is required to prove antitrust law violations through predatory pricing. Archer Daniels Midland asked a federal court to dismiss an ethanol markets lawsuit filed by Midwest Renewable Energy. Across multiple lawsuits filed in the U.S. District Court for the Central District of Illinois, plaintiffs advanced virtually identical theories. They alleged that from late 2017 through late 2019, ADM deliberately sold its ethanol at artificially low prices at the Agro terminal, driving down ethanol prices nationwide. The twist in their theory was how ADM allegedly profited not by later raising prices to monopoly levels, as traditional predatory pricing schemes work, but by simultaneously trading ethanol futures contracts that gained value as spot prices fell. ADM moved to dismiss their original antitrust complaints on the ground that cutting prices is an essential act when competing to sell a commodity like ethanol, and the antitrust laws exist to protect low prices for consumers, ADM said in its recent motion. Plaintiffs then relabeled their claims as seeking recovery for predatory pricing, but they continued to insist that ADM used low ethanol prices to produce gains on futures to recoup. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Seventh Circuit recently ruled in a similar case, United Wisconsin versus ADM, that unless a plaintiff shows ADM eventually caused consumers to pay sustained monopoly prices, claims of predatory pricing must be dismissed. That decision is based on a fundamental principle that antitrust laws are designed to benefit consumers, attorneys for ADM said. And once again, prices for half of 8 major fertilizers were up last month, and the other half were down. 3 fertilizers had sizable price moves, which DTN designates as anything 5% or more, with 2 of those moves higher and the third lower. The 2 fertilizers with significantly higher prices were DAP and anhydrous. DAP was 7% more expensive compared to last month, and anhydrous was again 6% higher compared to last month. Prices for the 2 other fertilizers were slightly higher, being MAP and UAN 28. Urea led the 4 fertilizers with lower prices than last month. The nitrogen fertilizer was 5% less expensive compared to last month. Prices for the 3 remaining fertilizers were slightly lower than a month ago, and those being potash 1034.0 and UAN 32. Back with more after this.
Attention construction pros. Purple Wave Auction brings quality equipment to your fingertips. Join our bi-weekly online auctions featuring dozers, excavators, loaders, and more. We provide detailed listings, photos, and seller contact info. Inspect online or in person. With our no reserve policy, every item sells to the highest bidder. Visit purplewave.com today and see why informed builders choose Purple Wave. Transparent processes, real deals. Your next great purchase awaits. purplewave.com.
Whether you're in the fields or on the farm, creating a safer work environment has never been easier. BWC's safety consulting services are included with your policy premiums and offer training and education for everyone in your farming operation. It's always the right time to make safety a priority. Visit bwc.ohio.gov or call 1-800-644-6292. The Ohio Bureau of Workers' Compensation, here to help you work safely.
Today's market analysis is brought to you by the Louis Dreyfus Company, excited to be building the newest state-of-the-art soybean crush facility in Upper Sandusky, Ohio. For marketing information of your beans to LDC, call 574-566-2113. Here's Ryan Martin.
Grain markets finished the midweek trading session mixed. Corn higher, beans flat to a little higher, and wheat markets down overall. It was an interesting day. NOPA crush report was out. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. But everything else out there saw technical reasons for the trade. Corn moved above its 50-day moving average, and that sparked some short covering. Funds bought about 10 to 12,000 corn futures contracts yesterday. That was probably the biggest surprise on the day, closely followed by NOPA. But as we take a look at the corn side of the equation, it was all about that technical indicator moving above the 50-day moving average. That means we need to see a confirming close there to really get this market super excited. All right, let's go to the NOPA report. NOPA crush showed a record 197.9 million bushels. Soy oil stocks came in at 1.243 billion pounds. The crush was way above expectations on the inclusion of new plants and strong margins. The soy oil stocks held steady with the month prior but reflected stronger than expected offtake. The WASDE report, the next one we get, is that November? Probably not. Maybe December. We'll see. But it likely has to revise its soy oil carrying supply for 24-25 upward here at least a little bit. As we take a look at other stories on the wheat side of things, world wheat exporters battling for trade demand. They're willing to cut price when they find demand. There can be Board of Trade grain bounces, but overall it feels very bearish in the wheat side of things. Paris milling wheat was down yesterday to kickstart the move lower here in the U.S. Brazilian soybean harvest is just 11 to 13 weeks away. Brazil soybeans are going to continue to flow to China, while U.S. beans are sitting here languishing. That brings up the trade picture. Treasury Secretary Bessent, in a CNBC interview, suggested that the U.S. has tools at hand to combat China's licensing of rare earth mineral exports. China dramatically slowed its rare earth metal exports over the past couple of weeks as a trade negotiation lever. Going hand in hand with that, there's been a lot of public mentions of soybeans and the U.S. farmer in this whole trade war with China, tit-tat. It's going to be a story that doesn't go away anytime soon, but the demand is still not here. The next WASDE, whether it's November or December, probably has to take that soybean demand balance sheet number down. I'm Ryan Martin.
And thanks, Ryan. We'll look at the overnight figures after this. Think biodiesel is just another fuel? Think again. Biodiesel is Ohio innovation on the move. Clean, green, and built to keep diesel engines running strong. It's an engine booster, a soybean supporter, and an environmental champion all in one. Every gallon reduces emissions, strengthens Ohio farms, and powers your ride. Drive with purpose. Choose biodiesel. Learn how at soyohio.org.
Let's talk about America. Not taxes or tweets or the issues that divide us, but how incredible our country is. Whether you come home to a crowded city street or sleepy small town, everyone deserves to live in a clean, green, and thriving community. We are Keep America Beautiful, the nonprofit working with millions of people like you to end littering, improve recycling, and beautify communities. Learn more at kab.org. Together, we can do beautiful things.
Today's market's brought to you by Seed Consultants. Simply better performance online at seedconsultants.com. Overnight at the open, December corn still holds unchanged at $4.16 3/4. If you jump clear out to May, you're down 1/4 cent at $4.40 3/4. November beans $10.07 1/2 cent, up a penny. January $10.25, that's up 3/4, and March $10.40 3/4, up 1. Wheat's mixed, with July down 1/2 at $5.38 1/2, and September up 1/2 at $5.53 3/4. In livestock, October cattle $242.17, up 35. December $246.77, up 27, and February $248.75, up 22. December lean hogs up 45 cents at $83.60. February, $85.70, up 25, and April, $89.32, up 27. November feeder cattle down 65 at $380.67. January down 20 cents at $377.85, and March $375.60 and trading up 7 cents. Thanks for joining us. I'm Dale Mignot. This is the Ohio AgNet.